All right, Sajid, we're on the air.
Hmm.
How are you, Sajid?
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Good.
How are
So
things with you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. I'm on the other side of the world from you. At
Mhm.
present, I'm actually in northern France,
Okay.
way up north. Where are you? Are you in Indonesia?
Yeah. I'm in Jakarta. Yeah.
Which is, I think that's your home base, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
based in Jakarta, so I'm originally from Bangladesh, so I spend my time between Bangladesh and Jakarta.
Ah, okay. That's what explains that very clearly visible passion for Bangladesh. Interesting. Okay, it's home to you. I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I believe you
Uh,
met Kevin, my colleague, in Dhaka recently, didn't you?
yeah. So we had a digital conference there, which
Right.
essentially, is the largest conference organized by the government. So we had a lot of investors, entrepreneurs, regulators over there,
Okay.
and Kevin was there, and there were a few other VCs.
Mm,
This was the first time we had some international VCs on the ground.
I see. Okay. All right. Let's get this thing. Let's tee this one up. For anybody who's watching out there, live, welcome. This is the famous Emerging Frontiers open video chats. It's just going to be Shajid and myself today, as far as we know. The thing is, the door is always open to the show, so anybody can walk in anytime. That's what makes it so much fun, right? It's an open platform. But I have a feeling like it's just going to be you and me today. But then again,
Mhm.
Sajid, you have this enormous amount of experience and a big brain to fix. So I think this is going to be an interesting one. The theme of today's conversation is all about e-commerce and I think we're going to be especially speaking about Asia. Although looking at your profile, you've also had experiences in Africa, I see. But the thing is, when I was looking through your LinkedIn profile, Sajid, I mean, I could find currently like 10 occupations, and for a moment there, I thought we should rename this video to, time management skills or something, because that's really impressive. You seem to be involved in so many things, and it seems to me like you've sort of transitioned from being a traditional banker and you've dove totally into that fascinating space of entrepreneurship, right? Is that right?
Yeah, so the reason I was in Africa, and actually my last job was in Indonesia.
Right.
So I was with an emerging market bank called Standard Chartered.
Mm.
So it's big on the emerging market. So I started in Bangladesh, moved to Africa, in Nigeria specifically, and then mostly in West Africa.
Okay.
And from there, I moved to Dubai, then Singapore, and my last job was in Indonesia.
I see.
And so I left banking last year and started my own business,
Mhm.
which is quite wide. So one thing is we are setting up the first wind turbine power plant in Bangladesh.
Mhm.
So we signed a deal with the government. So we are working on setting up the power plant. At the same time, I'm involved into a couple of accelerator programs in Bangladesh and Indonesia,
Mhm.
which basically works in Indonesia. I'm involved with a company called Endeavor. So that basically looks at the high impact entrepreneurs and try to really, make them probably $1 billion company
Is that
someday.
linked to the Endeavor people from San
Yeah,
Francisco?
yeah. It's the same
Oh,
one.
that's
So
a fine firm. Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
yes. So I work as a mentor to their local, Indonesia arm.
Okay.
Uh, and of course, the other thing that I'm very passionate about is the whole technology space. So we launched the Founder Institute, the accelerator program from Silicon Valley in Bangladesh.
Mhm.
And that led me to quite a few investments in technology space.
And it seems like what I've also noticed is that you seem to also be very much behind teaching people how to code everywhere, right? That seems to be one of your top of the bill items on your profile. Tell us a bit about that, because coding for entrepreneurs obviously is giving them a key to the world, right?
Yeah, so one of the companies that I'm involved with is called Coders Trust. So
Yeah.
this is a very exciting company. It has Martin Lund from Skype,
Hmm.
one of the first investors of Skype, as a chairman. So the way this company is designed is that it wants to bring in the microfinance, which is quite a famous way of financing in Bangladesh with Grameen Bank and others.
Right.
So they want to bring coding and microfinance together. The whole idea is to take people from the rural areas or the people who can't have the financing to learn coding, teach them coding, and then bring them to a platform like Elance and Odesk. So they have launched in Bangladesh very successfully. Now expanding to India, to Brazil, to Indonesia. So they're expanding very fast globally. The company actually started in Denmark. I mean, the headquarters in Denmark, but their first venture is in Bangladesh.
Oh, okay. It's interesting because I connected with a few other people in Singapore recently who are in the same space. I'll definitely have to make sure I connect you guys with each other. And maybe
Sure.
you are already connected because I guess I hear nobody sneezes in Bangladesh without you knowing about it. So.
I mean, this whole coding space, as you're mentioning, is very exciting. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, a lot of just teaching coding. There's a lot of things happening. There's different ventures there, and I think for markets like Bangladesh, and this Codas Trust is also getting quite big in Middle East. They're working with the Dubai and Bahrain government. So I think a lot of government is really focusing on coding to improve the entrepreneurial skill and improve the overall economy of the country.
Yeah, I guess you're right because I mean in the end it's the amazing thing is, and we always sort of say this over and over again, but you give someone a Wi-Fi signal and a device and the world is theirs, right? And if you don't teach them how to actually sort of completely vertically build all their tools and to access the world, they have a drive and a hunger that we're not even used to over here. So I think you're in a very fascinating space. I'd like to get a little bit more specifically into the e-commerce space because, after all, that's what we titled this episode as. But what to you is, so your focus is really on Southeast Asia, Bangladesh, Indonesia. What are you seeing as the most obvious opportunities, and what are the things that excite you most in the e-commerce space?
I think it's set to boom. And it's not a question of whether it will happen or not. It's a question of how fast it will happen. So we had, Indonesia is really growing very fast on the e-commerce. You have some big names like Tokopedia and others, which has raised 100 million from Sequoia and others. Big name VC firms. And there are many other e-commerce space as well as Rocket Internet, Rakuten. Everyone is playing in this space given the potential of the market. The Bangladesh is obviously probably 4 or 5 years behind on the e-commerce space. But what I see happening in Bangladesh is, it's a highly dense country with 140 million people, very busy, traffic, always high traffic. So e-commerce is, again, set to explode. And you see basically 3 distinct trends in e-commerce. One is, the typical e-commerce in the sense where it is a peer-to-peer platform, where someone wants to sell a car and someone else wants to buy it. So that clearly, I think, comes across as the first. The second is you see Amazon-style e-commerce where someone basically buys, checks the quality, and then sells it. So you also see that growing quite fast in these markets. And the third e-commerce that you see is more niche type e-commerce, which is basically, you can say sort of roughly, which focuses on furniture or some handicrafts and stuff like that, almost like a Etsy sort of thing. So there are a couple of e-commerce which are focusing more on the niche group. I think the e-commerce in this space is really expanding fast.
Yeah, the case is obvious indeed, and I think it's just only begun because again, this is very obvious now. I mean, you speak about this 3 or 4 years ago, it's like, huh? But right now, what we're seeing is also the proliferation of connectivity, because obviously e-commerce only makes sense when people have a device, and I think the data is just going to be difficult to gauge how fast it's going to grow because Right now, there's just over 3 billion online, and the word is that in 5 years only, there's going to be 5 billion people online. Obviously, most of those people, where they're going to be in those places, right? The numbers are kind of hard to grasp. We're talking about 2 billion people coming online, and those that are online sort of going up the curve of sophistication. So I find for any business who has an access to the world, I find the numbers mind-bogglingly huge. It's almost like sitting down and thinking about the universe in itself, right? The sheer size of opportunity is just ridiculous. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, what do you think are the nations that are going to be evolving fastest, or anything to share on that?
Yeah, I mean, someone was commented that if you say that this idea won't work, that probably means a few million people will buy it. So basically, like you're saying, you have like 2-3 billion connected, and the fact that you can sit anywhere in the world and probably develop a software that can sell to 3-4 billion people with a click, that's a huge market, right? I mean, the potential, and it's a question of exponential growth, mostly driven by a couple of facts. First of all, the smartphone is getting cheaper at a significant rate. So I read, I think, a statistics that by next year, by 2016 or 2017, the estimate is there will be more than 1 billion smartphones.
That's a crazy number. Just imagine 1 billion things. 1 billion things is enormous. It's wow.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're talking about people with a smartphone, that means they'll have access to e-commerce, and the fact that you have all these people who are always on and connected to internet, that means that the e-commerce market is huge. The potential is huge. I think that the third thing which is going to drive it is the whole experience of e-commerce, right? So people are, people want to have more frictionless experience as they continue to evolve, more sophisticated in their experience. So with e-commerce coming in, where the delivery is more, at your doorstep, you can do it at the click. Nowadays, you have options where you can, even decide whether a jacket will fit you or not. So there are some softwares which helps you with that. So yeah, I mean, I think as the whole shopping experience is becoming frictionless, I think this is set to explode.
Yeah, just something that I always wonder about. I'm wondering what you're thinking of it. The language thing. So the language barrier. What's your view on that? For example, obviously, e-commerce is supposed to be a global game, but will it be more of a local game, not only for language purposes, but also maybe for logistics? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it will be more of for logistics purposes, not so much driven by language.
Okay.
I think the challenge for e-commerce business is a couple of folds, right? First of all, it's a very capital-intensive business. So for a company to grow, so for example, let's say the way Uber grew globally, for Amazon to grow or scale that first is difficult, right?
So Uber actually went out to acquire customers with cash, right?
Yeah. Cash, yeah. But the fact is that Uber did not have to maintain stock. So they basically have they basically developed an interface between the consumer and the the provider of the vehicle. So for them, the expansion was not as capital intensive as, for example, let's see if Amazon wants to set up a warehouse in India or in some other place. And that's one of the reasons you see a lot of local e-commerce going big, as you have seen in case of India. Flipkart and other companies are really growing fast. And there are many e-commerce companies in Singapore which has become quite well known. So I think that's the first.
Taxi one. The Grab Taxi one really inspired me. That's like a better version of Uber in a way, isn't it? I mean, the only thing is you still have to do a separate payment, but I mean, the idea was pretty simple. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's growing very fast. The whole Grab Taxi is. I talked with the investors in Grab Taxi. And one of the comments they made is that they think for markets like Singapore or Malaysia, where the taxi system is actually quite good, and they believe that given the regulatory challenges in many markets that Uber will face, probably Grab Taxi is a better solution, to penetrate those markets.
I guess it sort of supports an ecosystem that already exists. It's not like you're not like wedging yourself into into an existing world, right? You're not breaking it up, I guess. So it's an interesting.
Yeah. And the other thing, I think the reason the e-commerce would be, I mean, depends on whether it be local or global, is that how quickly. So for countries like Bangladesh or Indonesia, there are a couple of problems with e-commerce, or challenges rather.
Okay.
One is the payment. So in most of these cases, the payment is cash on delivery rather than online payment like you do in Amazon in US and other places.
Right.
So the whole payment mechanism is not strong enough, or there's not enough trust between two parties to do a online payment in e-commerce. So I talked with quite a fast-growing e-commerce company in Indonesia a couple of weeks back, and one of the comments they were facing, and one of the problems they're trying to solve, is to bridge this whole trust gap between the buyer and seller. And so they're saying that they will only do e-commerce on a local basis. So for example, if you want to buy a car, you only buy it to someone who is within your locality. So they're bringing the whole local element into this whole e-commerce space to bridge the gap of trust. But overall, I think that for emerging markets like Bangladesh, India, or Indonesia or other markets, this whole payments is an issue. The second is obviously the whole logistics of delivery. So as you see, like in US, you have a lot of delivery companies coming up, like Sheep and Postmates and others. In these markets, I think that is going to be another big sort of startups which would be coming across, which will be focusing on logistics and delivery on the e-commerce side.
That's an interesting point of view, because I guess what you're saying here is that initially this is going to be a local challenge more than anything else. There are going to be some barriers of entry, and I think you're right, that logistics and payment system, because there are obviously a bunch of risks involved. Not only the let's say the motorbike arrives with the goods and then there's no money, or the motorbike has to come back to the home base with money. those are obviously sort of concerns. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And so what else are you what are the other sort of things that you're seeing in incubation right now? What are the things that fascinate you mostly? Because you're very plugged into the whole startup scene and the whole entrepreneurial scene.
So I think for the emerging markets, I was talking with one of the guys who's involved in Myanmar. He's on the regulatory side. And we were talking about all these startups things, right? so he said that, look, before that, we need three things. I said, what? He said that we need energy, so we need power. Right. Second, we need telecommunication, and the third we need is road. And then we can develop the rest of the ecosystem. So I think a couple of things which in most of these markets the startups will continue to focus. One is, I think, e-commerce is a very logical growth area. The second would be financial technology, or the whole payment space. So there's one company in Bangladesh called Berges, which focuses mobile payment, and is basically one of the largest in the world, just after M-Pesa.
Okay, I was going to ask if it's similar. Okay.
Yeah, so it's basically, will probably be crossing M-Pesa in next year or so. So it's growing very fast. As Gates Foundations and IFC as investors. So I think the whole mobile payment space would be big in markets like Indonesia, Bangladesh, with smartphone and the whole challenges of the geography. So I think that's a very interesting space. And the third interesting space in markets like this is obviously companies that is working with health technology or education technology. So there's one company which I came across that work with women health issues. So in markets like Indonesia and Bangladesh, women do not have access to doctors, and sometimes they are sort of there are some cultural sensitivity of asking health-related questions. So they have developed the whole online platform where women can ask a question over phone, and there's a 24-hour doctors who provide support, and some basic initial advices on how to solve those. So I think this is a great
solution. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a big business, the whole technology space, and the entrepreneurs who are working to solve some very specific local problems. I think those would be big.
Yeah, you mentioned education. That really spikes my interest, because that's something that I'm personally also interested in. I think that's another thing, right? Of those millions and millions of people, I mean, you and I, we went to school and all that, but there's a lot of those entrepreneurs out there that will just have to go and self-school themselves. And it almost brings you to question whether it's worth getting one of those formal educations when there's already a bunch of people who are putting together real practical learning programs. So that to me is also a fascinating space. So you're seeing that proliferating as well in Asia at the moment? Is that something that people are tuned into and willing to use?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are two things will happen on the education space. One is, on the formal education side, I think there will be going to be a disruption on how the whole education is managed.
Yeah.
Well, so, you have companies which will provide micro-tutoring, which will cover, manage the whole education process online, help the parents and others to have a better understanding of how the student is doing, track the whole education system. So I think that will be one, the formal side. And the second is obviously the whole content will move online. So like you're saying, there will be a lot of programs which are coming up, which will be more online focused, more on a skill-based training like coding or other aspects, which will move online. So
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I'm saying no. I agree that I think that would be clearly a big area. This whole education technology.
Yeah, and I mean the dynamics also changes a lot of the dynamics because I mean obviously right now you step into, for example, University ABC, and anybody who works there, it gets your attention, right? But right now, since it's out in the open, I think it's funny that the educators, the teachers themselves are really going to have to learn how to profile themselves and really justify that, they have the skill set and they have the credibility to teach that on to other people. That's what I find the fascinating challenge. That's what's going to turn the whole education system upside down, right?
Yeah.
There's nowhere to hide there. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, one of the companies that I know, which is working on this very simple thing, right? In remote places in these emerging markets, most of the time teachers don't even show up in time. So they're making the whole process, so they're making the e-attendance, they're trying to bring the whole education management under online, So all these accountabilities are in place, these are the areas which they will have a strong support from the government and regulators.
Yeah.
So I think these startups will grow.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Fantastic. So now we can geek out for a long time, but we live in this world of attention span, so we've been going for half an hour. But this was interesting. This was intensely packed with great insights. I take a lot of stuff away from this. I found your insights, where we should focus on as investors, really interesting, and some of the things that I think at least I haven't really thought about that deeply, and maybe others, is that issue of logistics, payments, and so on. It's a fascinating space to watch. So thanks for bringing that to us. I think this is really valuable content. So
thank you. Thanks very much.
Well,
I really love what you guys are doing on the emerging frontiers.
Oh, thank you.
I think it has been quite an overlooked area on the startup space, but surely it can be a big big upside there.
Oh, well, we're just standing on our soapbox and shouting as loud as we can, I mean, and that's probably good a segue to, I mean, if you have anything to share or you have any views out there, join our platform. It's there for you. It's not a fund management company. It's not a bank. It's nothing like that. It's just really a place where people who are interested in entrepreneurship and emerging and frontier markets can come together. And these video shows, we made those so you can come and stand on the soapbox along with us. So, I mean, this is really it can give you an audience, it can give you some exposure, but also we'd love to hear your ideas. It's an open forum, so please don't hesitate to join us. Sajid, thanks again. This was fascinating. I hope to have you a lot more on the show.
Sure. It's a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Until next time, and thank you for watching, and see you soon.
Bye-bye.